Hi, this is John Diaz, VMware. I'm going to give you a sneak preview of the new 2.0 version of the vRealize Orchestrator Management Pack for vRealize Operations. Let's start in vRealize Operations. I'll show you quickly how to install and manage this. Of course, you go to Administration, and then you'll just simply add the pack file that you downloaded from the marketplace, as you would any other management pack or pack file, and install it. Once you have it installed, then you'll actually go and need to configure it and add an adapter instance. And that adapter instance will basically point at your Orchestrator instance, and you can either point at standalone Orchestrator, or you can use your Orchestrator for that's included with the vRealize automation. Some tips about some of the other settings. Auto discovery means that if you enable that any new workflows that you add to packages that are in the discovery list will automatically be added. So typically you want to leave that set to true. And then dynamic actions means that any actions that we have provided out of the box in the management pack will automatically be added to the action list for the various objects like virtual machines, hosts, clusters, and so forth. And then, of course, your credential set. And then you can save settings and you're ready to go. Now, what will happen is the management pack will actually go out to Orchestrator and set up the workflow package, or add the workflow package that includes the out-of-the-box workflows that will automatically be added to the action framework in vRealize Operations if you selected that option to enable dynamic actions. If not, those workflows will still be there, and you can certainly import them later, but they won't be added to the action framework. Now, the other thing that you need to do is register your vCenter server with vRealize Operations, or vRealize Orchestrator, I should say. If you haven't, you'll get an alert in vRealize Operations from the management pack that says, hey, you don't have a vCenter server configured in Orchestrator, and there's actually a workflow that you can run in there to do that. I won't cover that in this video. So once you have everything set up, you can also start to use your own workflows, and that's the focus of this video that I want to show. It's a new capability to not only import your own workflows, but to tie those workflows to the action framework, which means you can put them on the action menu for various objects like VMs, hosts, clusters, etc., like I said before, or you can tie those to recommendations for alerts. And if the workflow has meets certain criteria, which I'll explain, it will actually allow you to make that recommendation an automated action that will run when the alert is triggered. So very powerful capability. It's been added in this release, very useful, I believe. And what I'm going to focus on is to show you this in action with the 3 workflows that I've created to do this. Now, I'll cover these from top to bottom here, but the first workflow is actually a hybrid workflow, or a copy of a workflow that comes with the vCenter. It's actually in the library under the vCenter plugin, but I just copied that and made some modifications to it for the inputs and so forth. But it's basically to find orphan virtual machines. So I think this is pretty cool. What it does is it will automatically email you a list of any virtual machines that Orchestrator determines that are orphan, as well as any files that cannot be associated with any virtual machines in the inventory. So kind of does, twofold thing, basically looking for ways to disk space out on your data stores. Okay. The change that I made to this basically was I simplified the inputs for this, the to address, whether or not you want to email results and so forth. There were a few more inputs here. I just simplified this a little bit just to make it easier to use. And you could simplify this even more. Like if if you already know like what email address and so forth you want to send to, then you can really just eliminate a lot of the inputs here. But I left them just for an example. The next workflow is to set. Let me skip over that and go to set the host NTP. Now, this is a workflow that basically does what it says. If I have NTP running on my host, which I should, and I want to set the NTP servers in there, one or more NTP servers, then I can use this workflow to do it. And there's only one input here, and it's a string array for the NTP config. And basically, I take this input and use it to determine or use it to update the host object with the NTP server settings. Very easy script here, just a single workflow element with a very short script here to basically provide the time to update the NTP configuration settings. And then the last one is this rest host or reset host NTP, I should say. And what I've done here is basically I only have one input, and the input is for a host of the type VC host system, which is an object type in the vCenter plugin in Orchestrator. And because I've set it this way, I can automate this when I get an alert. As we'll see in Orchestrator or in vRealize operations, when I get an alert that says that NTP is misconfigured or not running or whatever the case may be, it will automatically grab the host name and go out and fix it basically for you. So again, very simple script here. I think I pulled the initial script for this. I did some searching and found someone had done a script similar to this on vBrownBag. So I just grabbed it. I made a few little modifications and used it in mine. Now, one of the things that I did do is because I'm only grabbing for the input to the workflow, the input parameter is just the host object itself, but the attributes for things like the NTP servers and the NTP config and so forth, I kind of pre-fill those, right? So in my script, I'm actually set. I've got some stuff hard coded. Probably not a best practice, but the idea being is that I know what I want that configuration to be, so I have Orchestrator just set it. So I'm not expecting any user input here. And again, if you want to automate the workflow, this is a requirement. You can't have any user input other than the VC object type that you're mapping the action to. Okay, so that's it from the Orchestrator side. Let's go over to vRealize operations and kind of see this in action. So if I let's go first to a cluster. So I'll go to one of my clusters in my environment, and let's say I want to find those orphan virtual machines. So I've got my actions. I've mapped my orphan virtual machine action to the cluster object in vRealize operations. And you can see here, so just by comparison, the red icons for the workflow. So you can see those workflow icons are kind of like this little workflow chart. But the red icons, or orange, I'm not sure what color that is, actually indicate one of the out-of-the-box workflows that I talked about earlier. The blue indicate workflows that I've manually added and mapped in there. And I guess I should cover that first. The way that you do that is if you want to add a new workflow as an action, you can go to this dashboard. It's probably the easiest way to do it. Go to the dashboard and select the adapter instance. And then on the action menu, there'll be a create modify workflow action on vCenter resources. And then you can just browse through all the discovered workflows in your Orchestrator instance, click on it, and then what you can say is, I want this to map to, obviously like a virtual machine in this case. And then the operation would be to add. And you can also see the ones that I've already kind of added, like add a custom attribute to a virtual machine, and it tells you it's already been added on the resource type virtual machine. So what this means is that workflow will show up as an action on the virtual machine context, action menu, and then you can run. Simple as that. Okay, so going back to my cluster and running the workflow to find orphan machines. So you can see that I imported the default one. You can see all the different things like lab manager present and lab manager system name. Probably not anybody running lab manager anymore. So that's one of the modifications I made to that workflow in my version of it, the JD version. I removed that because it was an optional input anyway, and it's not really required. So I can set this to my inputs here, and of course I want to email the results, my SMTP host, and port, username, password. I don't need any of that, so I can just accept the defaults there. If it was on a different port or something like that. The from name, we'll just put VROps, and the from address, say VROps at cdu.local, and then I'm beginning the action. And I can monitor the action in recent tasks and watch as it kind of goes through the process here. So I can just refresh this task and watch it, as it sends the work out to Orchestrator to just make sure that it's it's running. So you can see, let's grab the vCenter. It's going to go ahead and start doing its work there. If I go to Orchestrator, I can see that the workflow is running here. So this workflow takes a little time to run. But then once it's completed, then I'll get a completion message here in, I can see the logs that are returned. Like if we look, for example, at this other workflow that I ran earlier, you can see the logs from the Orchestrator workflow are shown here. So we can, you can get the status very easily from that without going out to Orchestrator. See if this completed. Yeah, so it completed, and I should have my email with all that information there. So that's one example. Let's talk about an example where we would do some more automation based on an alert. So let's assume, for example, I'm working in my vSphere client, and I leave my laptop unlocked, unattended, and my cat walks across the keyboard and just does all kind of crazy things and stops, because I would never do this intentionally, and I'm perfect in every way. So I'll just blame my cat, and then we'll also stop the NTP service just for good measure. So I've completely broken NTP at this point. Now, what will happen is I'll get an alert. I should get an alert very shortly here within vRealize operations that says someone broke NTP. And if I look at that alert, I can see, that the recommendation is I'll go ahead and fix that for you because I've automated this. So if I run this action, I can run the action from here. I don't need to, but you can see the only input for this action is that host name. And what the management pack will do is map that host name to the VC object, or the VC object in Orchestrator for that input, and then run the action. So I don't need to run it from here. I could if I want, the run actions here. It would just run it twice, essentially, to fix that. And again, we can go out to our Orchestrator instance, and we can see that it was successfully run. And if I go back, my alert should clear, indicating that everything's okay with my NTP settings. Take a couple of minutes for that alert to clear out. And actually, if I go back into the vCenter client, I can see that the service is running. If I go to my time configuration, I can see that everything is set back to what it should be. So service is enabled, it's running, and my NTP servers. Another thing that you can do, what I like about this is, so if I have new hosts that I've stood up or added, and I don't want to automate it, then I can simply either tie this alert to it, or let's say that I want to just change the NTP servers that the hosts are pointing to. Then I can run the action to update. Actually, let me do that from the host layer. I can run the action here to set the host NTP. And at this point, I need to have an input to figure out what to set this to. And I can actually send a string array in kind of JSON format. So you'll use curly braces. I would just say 10.173.22.6. These are not correct, by the way. These are not the NTP servers that my alert will actually trigger because these are the wrong NTP servers. But just showing you can send, an array as a workflow input. So this has a lot of implications for different workflows that you may want to run, as long as you can take a string input and then it'll be accepted by my workflow and update the NTP section. So begin the action, same thing. It's going to go out, and very shortly I should see these addresses change from .4 and .5 to .6 and .7. See the workflow execution here, and just started running. Oops. All right, and that completed successfully. And so if I go out here and refresh this, I should see, get this to update. I do see my, I can see the action taking place here in the vSphere client. Oh, you know what? That was a different server that I did it on. Which host did I do? 08. That is why. 08. And so we see .6 and .7 there. And we should now have an alert actually on this machine. Let's see if we got, not quite yet. Or it may have, but with me fooling around and wasting time, it may have already run. No, it hasn't, but it will pick that up very shortly and create an alert. And oh, there we go. Someone broke NTP. And if you go and look at the alert itself, you can see exactly in the symptoms, you can actually see what the problem is. Like the value should be this, the .4 and .5. But this is the actual value. So those aren't equal, and that's my symptom, and it triggered that. And we even get the time that it changed, and the time that we changed it to the bad one. So we are tracking that, and you can actually go into the all metrics and see that. But anyway, very quick sneak preview of what's coming in the next release very shortly. Did this video because I expected to be able to demo this at the vBrownBag Tech Talks at VMworld 2018 in the US. Unfortunately, they weren't set up for me to do live demos, so I kind of had to tap dance a little bit and do some hand wavy stuff. But hopefully this gets to the folks that were interested in my Tech Talk and gives you more information about what's coming and how powerful this integration can be. So thanks a lot.